All right, what's up, everybody? Here's the setup for today. This is how I have to connect my mic. Couple issues with my camera. So, first issue is that there's like a 23-minute roughly time limit, which is incredibly annoying. It's a video camera. Why is there a time limit on recording? Apparently, it has something to do with like taxes in Japan, where if you pay less taxes if it's more of like a photograph camera versus video camera. So if it's under 30 minutes, you can qualify it as like a regular camera, not a video camera. Incredibly annoying. And then as far as my mic goes, I have to connect it to my phone, and I'd rather just connect it to the camera so I don't have to like waste time syncing up the audio. So probably time for a new camera is what I'm trying to say. But either way, camera talk aside, welcome back to another episode. I have no idea what I'm going to call this series, but the feedback was incredible, way better than I was expecting. So I'll do more of these. I can't promise I'll do them incredibly often, but I think they're fun, and it's entertaining for me just to lift how I normally do and just talk about actual fun topics rather than just like think about them in my head. So basically what we've got for today is a push session. My push includes chest work, shoulder work, not the rear delts, but front and side delts, and then a decent amount of bicep work too. So when you see me doing like my preacher curls, my arm training for biceps in the 18-inch arm series, this is always after a push session. The triceps I'll do after a pull session, as you saw in the first episode of this series. So basically, what we're going to start with is just a bunch of Smith machine work. I'm going to pull it up on my computer because this is how I like to log everything. If I'm trying to record my audio on my phone, if I'm trying to look at my notes on my phone and track my training, it's an absolute nightmare. And I think I said this in the last video, but yeah, for any home gym guys, tracking on your laptop is easy. There's just less distractions. Let's see, so program, got this pulled up right here. And what today is kind of like my slightly lighter day as far as the push movements go. It keeps my shoulders feeling a little bit better. So we've got close grip, pause, Smith bench, and then a few other variations for some chest stuff. Then we'll move on to shoulders, then biceps towards the end. So as I warm up for bench, we'll talk about some of the comments that I got on my last video. You know what? I'll start with just the bar. So for Smith bench, as far as technique goes, it's basically it's very similar to a regular bench press. The grip that I like to choose is wide enough so I have my forearms perpendicular to the bar at peak resistance, which is going to be at the bottom. So right about here, you can see the forearms are stacked. They're not just like this. They're not way too wide or anything. So get through the warm-up, then we'll get to the fun part. So specifically for today, working in, I want to say it's like roughly the 6 to 8 rep range. 6 to 7 for the first set, then 8 to 10 for the second set. So it's a top set, back off set. It's a close grip technically, which it doesn't actually mean like a super narrow grip. What this means is just a little closer than my standard grip. So throw a plate on each side and we'll work into it. Alright, so now that I'm in like an actual kind of warm-up set, not just using the bar, what I'm going to do here is use my normal working grip for this set. So it's about 1 inch inside of the rings, which is 1 inch narrower than my usual grip. This is also a pause, so come down, gently tap my chest, press right back up. Alright, 1 plate down, then we'll go to 2 plates, 3 plates, and then 4 plates. No, I'm just kidding. One of the topics that I want to talk about for today, I got a comment on my last video. Basically, he was kind of just pointing out that he's like, how absurd it is that I'm on a road to 18-inch arm series that's almost over, and I said my arms weren't like crazy impressive or something along the lines of that in my last video. Basically what I'm trying to say by this is I don't really think my arms are a crazy strong point. I just think they're starting to kind of blend in with the rest of my physique instead of being like something that's really lagging. Alright, so this will be my last warm-up. I don't do a whole ton, like I said in the last video, as far as warm-ups go. For pressing movements, I find these do require probably the most warm-up of anything, but still, I don't really need a whole ton. If anything, I just need to like actually get physically warm because it's so cold down here. That's pretty much good. Pretty much feel ready to go. I think I'm at 290 for today, which is just 275 on this because of the weight difference. I said this last time, but the bar is 60. I don't have the counterweights in, so technically this is getting more out of less weight, I guess. I mean, I have to load up less if that saves me any energy. So, yeah, 275, first set. For reference, last week I did a little bit of a form reset, slowed things down a little bit, got 5 on this set, so I think the most I've hit with this is 7, but I'll try and go with a little bit cleaner technique this time, just like last time. So ultimately this is a good example of just using a technique reset properly. So if I was at this for 7, technically I'm like right in / above the window I'm looking to work within for the first set. But if my form wasn't up to par, then it's okay. I'll change my form, take the temporary hit in performance, which doesn't actually really change anything. It just lets me get more out of the movement, and it beats me up less, so it makes a bunch of sense. And patience is key for these kind of phases. All right, so first working set, let's get it. Alright, so maybe one more if I really tried to grind one out, but I actually forgot to put the safeties up, so figured I'd call that there. I think that was 6. So I'll take that, and yeah, I don't track the reps too closely in my head when I'm filming because I can just watch it back, which I have to anyways for when I edit. So not a huge deal if I mess it up. It's crazy how much weaker you are with a slightly narrower grip, at least myself. Alright, so one of the next topics I wanted to talk about was people will talk regularly about like my road to 18-inch arms, how it doesn't count because my arms aren't lean. And this is something I've talked about before, but when you're chasing a certain arm measurement, you can't chase that on a cut. Your arms are, even if you gain a little bit of muscle on a cut, the measurement's still going to be going down quite a bit. So it's like I could title it Road to like lean 17-inch arms, but like I'm already just about at 18 inches. So it's like, all right, well, I'm chasing a smaller measurement, but I'm going to be lean enough that it counters that, where it's like, it just makes more sense to chase a bigger number on the bulk, get my arms as big as I possibly can, obviously having the diet within reason, and then being like, okay, well, I'll get them as big as I can and then see where they end up on the cut. And if on the cut they end up at 16.5 at 10-12% body fat, then all right, well, I'll chase 18.5 inches on the next bulk and hope to have maybe 17 inches on the next cut. So that's that's part of it. I mean, yeah, if you want me to have 18-inch arms lean, I'll do the best I can. But that may never happen, and if it does end up happening, that's probably over 10 years away. So we'll see. Uh, yeah, I mean, you just have to you have to bulk first, and your measurements obviously when you're bulking are going to be bigger. So it makes more sense to bulk towards a certain measurement than just hope you grow on the cut, which it could happen, but the fat loss will ratio that pretty hard in terms of like the absolute measurement. So probably still going to take another 1 to 2 minutes rest here. I don't mind being liberal with my rest time. Next question that I have, not really a question, but just kind of a topic that someone wanted me to talk about. So this one is from a guy named Sam. He said bulking advice for people that are afraid to gain fat. So it's kind of a unique question, but it's also something that's very prevalent, as in like it's a problem that a lot of people face, especially younger guys. I find they're very afraid to gain fat. The shreds are at an all-time high right now in terms of popularity. It's a very popular look to have. I think a lot of it's just distorted from social media too. It's like you get guys that they cut, so they get lean. They take all their pictures. It's always during summer. They're tan. They have all this crazy lighting, great cameras, editing, Photoshop, all this stuff. And then they use that content either year round, so it looks like they're shredded year round, which not everybody does that, but a lot of people do. But then you also have to take into account that when people are lean, that's when their social media is at the highest. So if you have someone that is like a younger, like kind of Gymshark influencer type person, and they are super lean, that's when their Instagram is like popping off the most. So they're going to be like what everyone thinks is going on. They're like, oh, this is how this person always looks. They're always shredded. But then as soon as that person gains fat, their social media will fall right back off and someone else will replace them. So now you're always seeing the popular accounts on social media at the top that are always kind of in the explore page and whatnot. It's always going to be the people that have their peaked physiques when they're super lean, tan in the summer, whatnot, with the Photoshop editing, lighting, filters, and all that kind of stuff. So you have people that are all peaked out at the top, and as soon as they come down from that peak, they bulk and maybe they build muscle, but nobody knows about them. Nobody cares about them anymore. So you don't see that. You don't see what happens first. You see the peak. You don't see what happens after when they go back into a bulk. And a lot of people, especially these influencers, they get trapped at the top. They get trapped in that peaked physique. And it drives them crazy, drives them to take steroids so they can maintain their muscle and leanness and whatnot. And a lot of people get stuck there because they get addicted to kind of the fame and whatnot. So kind of a sad place to be. I understand that it looks cool and whatnot, but I feel for anybody that gets stuck there and can't really work themselves out of that. So I don't think I'll ever let that happen to me. I mean, obviously I've never been shredded at the same time where I had a bit of a social media following, so I can't speak from experience there, but I don't know. I think the social media thing is like it's a hobby, it's a passion. It's not like something that I don't care to have like a giant YouTube channel or anything. This is just for fun. So next set, weight's going to be a little bit different, dropping down to 270, which would equate to 255 on this. So I need a 10 and a 5. I feel like the plates that I need are always on the wrong side. Like when I need 10s over there, they all end up over here. All right. So last time I hit this for 7. Obviously, this is a lift where I'm not just going all out and moving as much weight, doing as many reps as I possibly can. And this is where performance will have a little bit of variance, because if I make this like a little bit harder than last time or a little bit easier than last time, that can have a positive or negative impact on my performance on paper. So if I get 8, cool. I'll take it with a grain of salt because I could have just like cheated a little bit since I have that buffer room between max performance and ideal technique. But then again, if I make it a little bit harder, like if I go half a second slower and can't really quantify that in my head, or maybe I pause for a little bit longer or something. Like, those are all little things that can make my performance seem lower, and a lot of people will let that ruin their day, ruin their session and whatnot. But you just have to zoom out and look at the bigger trends overall. So let's get this thing over with so we can hop into incline. I'm a failure. Oh, there we go. That's enough ab work for today. That's the nice thing about the Smith machine. You can rack it before you get pinned. So I think that was 9, I want to say. I'm going to be watching a lot of film later, huh? Alright, so 6 and 9. Nice. Up next, incline hammer strength press. Whew. Let's see. Got a few more topics written down too I want to get through. Meantime, we can shift over here. How does that look? That looks pretty good. I could get a little closer. Beautiful. That's it. Looks perfect. Alright, and is this even on both sides? Sometimes I store plates on one of these sides that I don't really see, and it just throws me off, to say the least. So, an interesting one. This is one of the, I think one of the more interesting questions that, or one of the more interesting comments that I've gotten recently. It's from a guy named Matt. He said, science-based lifting is just a fad. So, got a couple thoughts on this. This will be a fun one, so let's dive into it a little. So for science-based lifting just being a fad, I would disagree with it just being a fad because of how long it's been around. Science-based stuff really became prevalent pretty much at the same time that I got into lifting / started following the fitness industry. All right, so for science-based lifting, love my camera. What I'm realizing with this is there are two completely separate parties in the fitness industry that you either like love science-based training or just like are interested in it, or somewhere in between that spectrum, or you just dislike it. There's really nobody that's kind of in the middle, at least not people that you see, because it is social media, right? You only see the extremes. So I could be wrong with that. But what I am seeing is with science-based lifting, there are good arguments against it, and there are good arguments for it. So you have something like somebody that's just an old school bro. They're like, you know what? If you just get strong on some basic movements, like, you'll grow, and that works, and that's all you'll need. So you don't really need anything. We already know what works. We already know what produces great physiques. And they have a point. But on the other side of that, you have, actually, to expand a little bit more on that, they also say trying to learn anything more, so trying to figure out the science behind every little thing it's just things to like kind of confirm what we already know. It just distracts beginners. It gives them paralysis by analysis, and it holds everybody back. It's stupid. It's clickbait. It's all a waste of time and energy. And I kind of get where they're coming from. I would also say with the science-based or just being a little bit more analytical with your thinking and your training overall, that's definitely the side that I fall more towards. I wouldn't say that specifically to like I train purely based on science because I don't. I'm more of like an kind of evidence or I guess like I probably like kind of evidence-based, not strictly through like scientific studies, but I would say that side has really important just traits like curiosity. And I think that's a huge one where if you can understand like the actual process of how muscles grow, then when you have a different approach or a more refined understanding of how processes work, how muscles grow, how biomechanics work, like that gives you a whole new opportunity to view your training. And you compare this to like my philosophy with progressive overload, where I was told for so long that progressive overload is what causes growth. So in my mind, I was like, well, what's the point of doing like a side raise? What's the point of doing bicep or tricep work? Like all that isolation work is dumb because it's light. You can't really progress that much, so it's not going to drive much growth. If I want to grow my biceps, it's going to be through back work. And if I want to grow my triceps, it's going to be through like benching or dips or something like that. And when I changed my approach and I really just like took time away and I really thought about it hard. I've talked about it a bunch, so I'm not going to expand on this, like I said in the last video. But when I changed my approach to stimulus is what causes progressive overload because you create stimulus, you grow, and then as you adapt, you can therefore do more next time. And you can see an increase in your performance based on the adaptations that you forced in the last session. So when you change your approach like that, now I have a completely different lens on how training works. Even though people will say it's the chicken or the egg, it doesn't matter what comes first because both end up happening. And when I view my training now is, well, I create stimulus. Now, preacher curls are a valid option. Pec deck is a valid option. Isolation work is all valid. Movements where we're getting the same more out of less weight, all valid. Where I thought before I would just have to like do whatever I could to just move more weight because my body could read how much weight was on the bar and then I would grow from that. And I'm not trying to say the weight you use doesn't matter because it still has to be maximally challenging for you. But there's definitely more room to kind of play around with that. So it's a very interesting topic. Let me warm up on this and then I'll expand a little bit more. All right, so 3 plates on this guy for today. This is obviously a hammer strength machine. It is also short biased, so that does not mean I have to go for a mega stretch or anything like that. So when people say there's not much of a stretch on these, they feel kind of wonky in that like lengthened position, they're correct, but you're also misusing the movement. If you want to get a good stretch, this isn't the movement for that. This is to train kind of a shorter position, so mostly that lockout contraction, and you can kind of feel that while you're doing the movement. So definitely a bit different than something like a dumbbell fly or a pec deck where you are going for a stretch, but maybe not quite as much of a contraction. You just have to understand what each movement is for. So this is to train, obviously it's an incline to the upper pecs and the short position. The Smith pause bench was to train a very stable, flat movement with a lot of control. And then the pec deck, which I'm going to be doing after this, so that's to get a deep stretch and to get something that really converges a whole bunch so I can get a giant stretch, giant range of motion. And now across these 3 movements, I've trained all sorts of different functions that the pecs obviously do. So let's hop into the working set. And then, yeah, maybe I can talk a little bit more about science-based training. All right, let's get it. All right, that's it. Well, and that is just so grindable, but then it hits you like an absolute wall. You're just trying to like accelerate through that, and it gets harder as you go. Short movements like that are just unreal. Whew. Not that meat and potatoes are training by any means, but they are absolutely unique in that sense, where you can just grind all you want and you just hit a wall so hard. So I think that was 10. Back offset was 2.5 plates. That's gonna be a bit light, so I'll probably just go to 2.5 plus 10, so 2 plates plus 3.5. And then I found that the UK bodybuilders do this, where on a machine, like instead of trying to like say, how much does this little handle weigh? 45, 45, 45 times 6. It's just a complete waste of time, and it's annoying because you have to do the math every single time. And what you could do is just write down how many plates you're doing, so how many full plates, like a 45, and then if you add on 35 pounds on top of that, you just type in 2 plates plus 35, and then very simple from there. And of course, you don't want to add an actual 35-pound plate, you just want to do a 25 and a 10. Just speaking of like science-based and optimal, that's definitely science-based and optimal. It's also funny, I got a bunch of comments saying that like the sound of putting the plates on and whatnot, it's like music to people's ears, so enjoy the ASMR, I guess. So science-based lifting. Let's see what else I got. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too in the comments. All right. 8 to 12 is the range. 2 plates into 35 is obviously a weight I've done before, but not specifically for a back offset. I usually go a little bit kind of like slower, more controlled. I don't use an explosive concentric. I just use like a forceful but non-explosive concentric, which I find is very nice for strict technique and just general back offsets in general. All right, so in the meantime, until I think of some other interesting science-based debate points, one interesting topic, so this will be the hockey topic for today. Well, also, it's almost game 4 of the Cup final, so I do have to touch on that too. But hockey topic for today. The new Utah team. So Arizona, for those of you that don't follow hockey, the Arizona Coyotes are relocating to Utah. They were a pro hockey team that played in ASU, so about 5,000 people could go to those games, and the college students, I'm sure, loved it. Insane to probably go to college in that time, but obviously they relocated them to Utah. Things just weren't really working out in Arizona, so they came up with a list of 20 team names. 20 team names, and they all kind of sucked, honestly. But they refined it down to 6 based on a fan vote. In these 6 names for Utah, the Blizzard, the Hockey Club, Mammoth, Outlaws, Venom, and Yeti. And it's very obvious what they're trying to do here. So they're trying to go with something singular, which I think is incredibly tacky. I can't stand the singular names, especially when it's something that's supposed to be plural. So if you were going to do like the Venom, that could kind of work as a singular. Still think it's entirely tacky, but it's not as bad, at least. Like you have the Wild, like the Minnesota Wild hockey team, so you can't be like, oh, well, singular, that's it should be the Minnesota Wilds. Like, no, you can't do that. But when you have something like the Yeti, 1, Yetis aren't real. 2, it's Yetis with an S. So why would you take the S away just to be one singular Yeti? How are you going to take a hockey team that's one animal and that animal isn't real? That's all I'm going to say. So if I was a Utah resident, I would not be happy. I would also change my personal identification and put as many votes as I possibly could in for Outlaws, because that is an insanely cool name that people don't like because people, for whatever reason, are obsessed with this singular Yeti name, which I do not understand. So, for those of you that are hockey fans, I'd love to hear your takes. Even if you're not a hockey fan, like, you still know what names are going to be good or not for hockey teams. So there's the Blizzard, which is like a natural disaster. Keep in mind, it sounds cool if you're not a hockey fan, but the state next door in Colorado, their team is called the Avalanche. So why would you have two natural disasters right next to each other? That doesn't make sense. So you've got, was it the Blizzard, the Hockey Club? I don't need to expand on that. Not a genius name. The Mammoth, the Outlaws, the Venom, and the Yeti. Out of those 6, I'd love to see everybody's rank. I would also say there's another name that got somehow voted out from the top 20, which was kind of my tied for number 1 name, which would be the Mountaineers. I think that's a sick name. I don't know how that didn't make it to the top 6, especially considering the other names, which were just horrendous. But I don't know. If they're not the Outlaws, they're going to instantly be one of my least favorite teams, purely from like a marketing standpoint. Let's get this next set. I'm feeling ready. It's a short bias lift, so a little less fatiguing. Ooh. Oh, yeah, you just hit a wall. The last rep's a grinder, and then you're absolutely toast after that. Oh. Whew. All right, so that's it for compound lifts for the chest today. A couple technique points on this one. So I talked about this a little before. It's not like a lengthen or stretch bias lift, this hammer strength, or hammer strengths in general. So you don't have to go all the way down and get a crazy stretch because tension's going to be minimal there anyways. No point going for it. Whew. I find that it feels a lot better to just stop 2, 3, 4 inches above the chest and just grind out where there is tension. Keeps you in the groove. Just feels better. All right, let's log that down. I think that was 10 again, which is solid. And then, yeah, pec deck. So we'll be at 250 for pec deck. Let's see. So next question from a guy named NH17. Hot take he has. This is a hot take. So this is also I think this is a very good hot take, actually. I don't entirely agree or disagree with it. But essentially what he's saying is, you know what? Let me set up the camera first. He's saying that tracking reps is useless. And that probably just pissed a lot of people off, the fact that he said that. But I think, personally, there's a point to be made from both sides. So, obviously, tracking reps is a very useful tool in your training because you can get a very quick glance at another measuring stick for muscle growth. And when we're already fairly limited in how to measure our muscles anyways, or at least determine growth over a certain period of time, the most measuring tools that you can use is a good thing. You want to maximize every tool that you have. And the reason for that is because let's say you're just using your performance in the gym. There are issues with that because it's not an airtight method. You can increase your performance from fat gain. You can increase your performance from cutting range of motion, speeding up tempo, using more momentum, cheating your technique in various ways, like lifting your butt off the bench, widening your grip, shortening your pause, increasing your arch, bouncing off your chest. And it's like, there's so many little ways. And that's on a strict compound lift, by the way. Like, talk about tracking on isolation lifts, where there's way more ways you can cheat on the lifts, and progression is going to be slower anyway, so it just turns into this really gray area. So what happens is, if you're just relying on tracking your reps, then you can kind of get a pretty blurry idea of how your progression is going. It can still be a very good idea as long as you're very disciplined and consistent and analytical with your training, and self-aware, I would say too. But you also want to do things like take your body weight, take progress pictures, measure your muscles for sure. And one thing I find with tracking reps is that's a very consistent way to measure your training because one, you're already lifting, so you might as well log it. Two, if you're not someone that trains very hard and you have the approach of I want the results, but I hate the training, that can motivate you to say, all right, well, if I force myself to do another rep on this, that's going to lead to some growth, or it's a sign that I have been growing. And if you're someone like that, then it can be a valuable method. I would also say if you're somebody that does already train hard or is already very detail oriented, it can be counterproductive in some ways. And the way it can be counterproductive is if you are too addicted to the process of gaining strength or increasing performance. For some reason, a lot of influencers try and, I guess, oversimplify the process of getting stronger and progressive overload. So you see a lot of cases like every session you have to add a rep. Every session you have to add a rep or add 5 pounds. And I don't know where it came from, like every session. Like I don't know how in just one session, every single session, you're going to get enough stimulus and growth to just add another clean rep. It seems like a very arbitrary thing. It's the same as like, in my mind, it's kind of the same as like strength standards. It's like, oh, you'll be big when you can have a 3-plate bench, 4-plate squat, and 5-plate deadlift. And it's like, all right, well, 315 on bench. Like, did we pick 315 because that's just a nice number, or is it because it's 3 clean plates and that's what people are like mentally satisfied by? So it tells you that it's not something that is perfectly correlated with actual physical growth. It's correlated with what the person is seeking mentally and what gives them that psychological fulfillment in the gym. So it can be very distracting if you try and rush that process. And if you start to fall behind, the anxiety that can give you is crazy, because lifting isn't like it's not like some cute little hobby where you're just like going and trying something new, and if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, no big deal. It's like you're expending an absurd amount of energy, and the mental preparation it takes, especially if you don't like take a boatload of pre-workout every day, the mental energy it takes to get yourself to be in the mood and the mindset to go absolutely brutalize your body. It's a big psychological investment because it really goes against your instinct. So the reason why people want to understand and learn so much of how training works and how the science works and how the methods work is because they don't want to expend more energy and mental energy than they have to. And I'm like that too. So you can't just say that's somebody that's looking for an easy way out. Oh, you're trying to learn the science because you're afraid of like hard work and what. I think there are cases where people definitely do abuse that approach, but I would say in the vast majority of cases, people simply are already training hard. They want to make sure that hard effort is being refined into a productive process. So those are kind of my overall thoughts on that topic. And I would say if you're somebody that is too obsessive and you're just so concerned with adding reps and weight, you're going to slowly turn into a power lifter. And you might say that's I'm jumping to a conclusion or something, but it's like, no, I've been there before, and I train people too. And when they feel this external pressure from the fitness industry to always be adding weight and reps beyond like the very beginner phase, it's too tall of an order. And while in theory it sounds good and easy and a very straightforward like rule of thumb to train by, it's just not that practical, because now when people have a little fluctuation or a slightly bad day, they force themselves and they corner themselves into these strange techniques for each lift. And that's when you see people trying to force progressive overload and they're like bouncing the bar off their chest or swinging every weight and everything. and I'm not saying that cheat technique is bad, but when you feel like you have to completely force everything, it's like, well, okay, if you didn't add a rep to a lift for 1 or 2 weeks, now people are talking about like, oh, this staple lift that's worked well for me for so long, I can't add a rep or 5 pounds over the course of a week or two. It's like we have to rotate this lift out, and it's completely missing the point of what the true goal of training is. So that's my rant. Let's actually train now. I can rant sometimes about progressive overload if you couldn't tell. All right, so warm-ups, feeling easy, feeling good. 250 is the weight for today. I will need a gym pin fairly soon on this. All right, yep, camera's all good. Like I said last time, that's like my least favorite part of YouTube, all the camera stuff. Like the 30-minute or 20-minute filming limit is just absurd. But either way, can't complain. We're in a pretty sick home gym with a good camera overall. All right, that's going to sound absurd. I'm so sorry. That grunting is unreal. You know what? I might actually stay at that weight for the back off set. Let's see. Did not track my reps there. I'd say, was that 9? Maybe 10. I'll write down 9 with a little question mark. Beautiful. Back off set, we're going to go to 250. And stick with that weight. Stretch is just immaculate on that thing. Whew. All right, so next question from somebody named Ron. I'll get to this one in a second. Whew. So Ron asks, what's your take on pausing in the stretched position? So this is a good question, and it's something that I really get all the time. It's a super popular topic. My take on pausing in the stretch position is it depends on what lift you're doing. So if you're doing something where you are using some form of hybrid lift or a lift where you're trying to get more out of less weight, I'm not a huge fan of pausing. And the reason for that is because when you pause in the stretch position, if it's a stretched focused lift, which is when you normally pause in the stretch, that's going to be peak resistance. And you might say, well, that's a good thing. Pausing in peak resistance, that's going to get you the most stimulus. But I would also say it's extremely easy to have two things happen. One, lose the stretch reflex, at least to a degree. And two, it's very easy to kind of misgroove your reps from that position, since you're going to be putting yourself in a disadvantage from a force output standpoint in a very difficult part of the range of motion, usually the most difficult part. So if you take something like a plat style squat, so if you're doing a squat where your hips are right there, and your hips are much stronger than your knees, if you're doing a knee-biased squat where you're purposely forcing your knees to go forwards, you're going to be using far less weight than you could handle if you were if someone told you, put a bar on your back, use the most weight you possibly can, squat down to parallel or slightly below, and stand back up. So that's going to be a low bar squat, and that's going to be right to parallel. Your knees are not going to bend very much. If you take a knee-dominant squat, so say you go a high bar squat and you purposely force your knees to track forwards, and you don't tap into that strength potential from your hips. What happens here is once you get out of that groove by pausing in the bottom, what happens is your body is going to recruit your hips to take over, and that's not really the point. So using that stretch reflex to your advantage, controlling the descent through peak tension or to peak tension, depending on the lift, if the end range is peak or if the end range is right below peak. If you pause in the stretch, your body's going to want to take the stronger muscle to get out of that, because keep in mind, you're going not into the eccentric after pausing in peak tension, you're going into the concentric, which is much, much harder than the eccentric. You know, on a failure rep of bench or squat or whatever lift you're doing, getting ready to go through that eccentric and going through the eccentric it's hard, but then you can just completely hit a wall and inch off your chest on bench, for example. And the concentric is just like exponentially harder than the eccentric. So I think there is an advantage to not pausing, and I have a hard time saying that like an isometric pause in the stretch is going to be superior for growth in a lot of those movements. And that's pretty much the reason why you won't really see me pause very much. Sometimes you'll see me pause on something like a Smith JM press, and that's a unique instance because while it is a hybrid lift, it's also on a Smith machine and you're locked in. You're only using 2 joints. But for something like a Smith machine hack squat, you could say, oh, similar concept, it's 2 joints. But you're not locked in on that because your hips can shift back. On a regular hack squat, maybe a little bit different, but I don't know. I would only reserve that for like maybe the final rep or something. But even then, it's like you probably want to use a little bit of that stretch reflex as long as you're controlling that eccentric. So, whew. Let's do some pec deck. How's that sound? Oh. Maybe turn your volume down like 2 notches. Oh, all right, I'm done. 1 muscle out of 3 down. All right. It's not bad. There's nothing more enjoyable than training chest, aside from arms. All right, done with chest. Let's do some good old interior delt / high incline press. So, all right. I didn't even track reps. What did I get? 8 on that? Maybe 9. Up next, yeah, high incline. Whoa. You know what? I guess you guys could watch. Let's get this thing set up. So for this high incline press, this is a 60-degree incline. Since it's a Smith machine, 75 degrees is okay, but depending on how big your face is, and I have a massive head and a massive face, and kind of a big nose too. It kind of sticks out and it gets in the way, so I can't do a 75 degrees. So 60 is what it is for today. Whew. Yeah, put that a little low, huh? And my grip for this is actually going to be the exact same as my close grip bench from earlier. So an inch inside the rings. So a cool thing about this lift is it's mostly front delts, a hair of side delts, and then it is a little bit of upper chest too. So upper chest already got hit pretty hard with the hammer strength, but with this, instead of the short position, this is going to be more of a mid-range biased movement. So maybe a tad redundant, but it's a steeper incline, so maybe upper of the upper chest, plus it's going to be, again, a different resistance profile. So this is 160 pounds, nothing too crazy. Oh, you know what? I'm looking at the wrong one. We do not have 160. I was going to say that's a little bit off. So weight for today is going to be 210. Miscalculated very, very slight bit on that, so it seems. Oh. What else do we got for topics? One thing I want to do on one of these episodes, I might do it today just because the comments are so great on the first one, is I want to take time and even just kind of like react and in-person live respond to all these comments in a video. So next question on this one. Oh, you know what we should do? This is a good time to talk about the Cup final. So couple thoughts on this. Basically, Panthers and Oilers, I figured it would be 1-1 by Wednesday. It is now Friday. This will be uploaded on Saturday. The series is 3-0 Panthers. So Oilers are toast. It's probably going to be a sweep. What I would say for this is the way the Panthers have set a new standard impresses me. I'm not a fan of that team. I don't like a handful of players on that team, but you have to admit their roster management is incredible. So Zito, who's the general manager, he's put together a team that, yes, as let me change this angle a little so I can actually see the camera. So Bill Zito, who's their manager, has put together an awesome team. And the way I see it is like in all of sports, but hockey specifically, the center position is incredibly excuse me, it's incredibly important, and that's what determines if your team has the potential to win a Stanley Cup or not. And the reason why so many teams talk about like the NHL draft and how that's so important to build your actual team, this isn't something people talk about very much. I'm a bit of a hockey nerd, so this is like my other kind of hobby that I'm into. The prime age for centers in hockey is much younger than any other position in the league. So when you take a position where you have to be much younger to succeed and win a cup and win a championship, you have to build that through the draft, unless you just get lucky with a trade. And for whatever reason, that elite top tier center wants out of whatever team they play for, which is extremely rare. The prime age for a center is usually mid-20s to late 20s. So anywhere from like 22, 23 up to like 29. And if you have like just turned 30, very rarely you can win a cup that way. It's like in the salary cap era I'm talking about. So you have to have someone that's basically in their 20s. And the reason why that's so hard to build around is because you have to do it in the draft. And most of the time, these guys you can already tell how elite they are by the time they're 18, which is when you get drafted, which is absurd. Occasionally, you can find a hidden gem later in the draft. Tampa did that with Point. But the vast majority of the time, the cup-winning top centers, mid to late 20s, drafted first overall or second overall. So you have to have a bad team to get that draft pick, unless you're the Rangers. But you have to have a bad team, or you have to tank so you can get the first or second overall pick. So it happens every single year. A top elite, true number one first line center that's in their usually mid to late 20s, sometimes early 20s. And by the time those players get to free agency, if they don't want to renew with their team and they're like, all right, well, I'm going to test the market and get a big contract from whoever wants to pay me most, by the time they get there, they're 28, 29, 30, or early 30s. So they're out of their prime. And usually they just end up re-signing with their team anyways. If they happen to win a cup, they'll kind of just ride it out in that market. So very difficult to build a cup winning team. But what the Panthers have done that impresses me is, yes, they have that elite top center, but hockey's not just a one-man sport. It's something that's required, but you have to build much more. And the cool thing is, yeah, you have to get lucky to get that one guy, but you also have to have an incredible amount of talent and just overall wisdom from your management team to build out the rest of the roster. So you can look at a team like the Panthers and say, oh, well, they just got lucky drafting Barkov, who's their elite first-line center. And you could say that about 8 to 10 other teams in the league that have a first-line center because there's not enough for every team. But those teams have that talent, but they don't have the rest of the roster. So they rely on that luck to build a roster around this one person, but then they don't actually put the time in to build a legit competent roster, where Florida, the rest of their core, I think 5, 6, 7 of them, they've acquired through free agency, tons of trades, and even their top defenseman, Forsling, who's just unreal, they picked him up off of waivers. So Carolina was going to send him to the minors, and when you put a player of a certain age down to the minors, there's an opportunity for any team to claim that player. So they claimed him off waivers. Now he's like a stud number one defenseman. So they find these guys and they turn them into like this perfect team. They know exactly what they're looking for, and it's very impressive. So that's my hockey rant today. And all right, camera turned off again, but that was my hockey rant for today. Thoughts on the Cup finals? Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Any hockey fans here? I hate them, but they deserve it. And I like that they're setting a new standard. I think that's pretty cool. So let's do some steep, high incline press. Oh. Oh, that was tough. Let's crawl out of here. So, that was the top set, 6 reps. Failed on number 7. It is what it is. I got one more set here, and then we'll get to the back off. Or no, then lateral raises, then we'll get to biceps. Gotta fix this bar first. Whew. Alright, so 6. Next set is just 150. So on this, though, I just mean 1 plate. I also want to say, but I wanted to ask, any camera people, anyone that knows anything about just cameras or what's best for YouTube or whatnot, I'd love to hear a recommendation for what to get. I've heard the Canon G7X Mark III is a good option, but there might still be some type of limit on that. I just want something that's not going to shut off every 20-25 minutes. So if you have any recommendations, please let me know. I don't want anything that's like super fancy overkill. I'm, like I said, not very tech savvy. I just need something that I can come down here, has good quality, I can turn it on. Preferably something that can connect with my mic. It's the Rode Go-To, I think it's called. So something that's connects with my mic, looks good, and does not stop recording after 20 or 30 minutes would be excellent. As far as budget goes, I don't care a whole ton. I mean, it's for the channel, so I don't mind putting some money into it. Ideally under like maybe $1,000 or $800 would be cool. Anything above that, any camera I've seen that costs more than that is just loaded with like the bells and whistles that I just, 1, don't need, and 2, don't know how to use. So it's probably a waste for me. Either way, got one more set on this high incline press. This is like the back off set, so I'll go maybe a hair more controlled and whatnot, but overall just still using my main training philosophy, which is just pushing hard and pushing to 0 RIR. Sometimes I'll fail by accident, but I never really try to fail. I just try and get those grinders at the end. So let's make this one happen. You know what? That is the wrong weight. It is not 150. I keep looking at the wrong lift. It's 200. I was like, that feels way too light. There's no way. No way I got so much stronger after a working set. This is more like it. That's why you should always double check your weights. No. Oh. Oh. All right, yeah. Front delts, upper chest is just toast right now. Absolutely smoked. So there's that. Now what I'm going to do is a few reps of side raises. So I just do 2 sets on here, train them hard. I don't track them or anything. I just do, it's 32.5 pounds. I'll just not really worry too much about form or anything, not worry about tracking. I'll just do these as kind of maintenance for my side delts. They're already a fairly strong point, so as you become more of like, I guess, a seasoned lifter, I've been lifting for 8 years at this point, it's okay to accept that some muscles are strong points and kind of just maintain them. I'm not saying I have like the biggest or best side delts ever, or that even they're even not, I'm not even saying they're even close to like their potential size, but in terms of my overall satisfaction with my delts, my side delts in particular, I'm pretty much okay with it for now. And I would rather use just that mental energy and some physical energy towards muscles that I care more about training right now, like my arms, my back, even my chest. Whew. So typically what you'll see here is 1, maybe 2 sets. I'll probably just do 1 today. And then I'll move into some bicep stuff. The one thing about having a super crammed home gym is I have like just machines and stuff everywhere. I don't really have a whole ton of space for like dumbbell work. Let's see, is that a good angle? Yeah, that looks fine. That's probably good. All right, so not going to care too much about being fresh or whatnot for this set. This is just kind of a little bit of maintenance work, like I said. Nothing too crazy. And it's okay to have some muscle groups on maintenance where you just do a little bit of work. Don't worry too much about them. Just accept that you're not going to optimize growth. But if you pick and choose your battles properly, that energy can be spent elsewhere. Then I'll usually rest for a second and just do like strict partials unilaterally. Oh. right, so those are done. I keep them in my program, but I don't actually write the number down. I just put an asterisk in my rep counter, and it's pretty straightforward. So, up next, this is where I might reserve some of the other, like, talking points for this video and just talk about my arm training, because this is obviously a preacher curl, which has been the meat and potatoes of my channel for a very long time. I'm sure when you see this exact frame, in any of my videos or thumbnails, I'm sure it makes you think of a certain series I do, just like this. So, what we're going to talk about today is preacher curls, just for a little bit. So, I'm going a little bit heavier on these now. I'm up at 115. I talked about this in a podcast I did, which you'll see released probably fairly soon. But overall, I think that arm training has a lot of untapped potential. And what I mean by this, I elaborate more on this in that podcast that I did. But when you see something like the strength standard, just from a strength perspective, look at the strength standard change that we've seen from, say, the early 2010s to now in terms of powerlifting. So back then, a 315 squat used to be like one guy in the gym could squat 315, and he's incredibly strong. That's like the big jacked guy in the gym. Now it's like, if you bench 315, that's like average. That's like nothing special anymore. So what I'm seeing here is, if you were a freak powerlifter in the early 2010s, and you were, say, when I say freak powerlifter, I mean like relative to everybody else. So if you're benching 350, squatting 450, deadlifting 600, in the early 2010s or late 2000s, like you were kind of a freak in those times in the general population, at least. Competitive stuff was still fairly niche back then, at least at that point in time. Now, what I'm noticing is, if you look at the strength that I have on preacher curls, on Smith JM press, and you type in like I was curious one day. I was typing in like preacher curls just on YouTube, just typing in preacher curls. I'm like, what? Like, how do I compare to other people on like preacher curl performance, just for curiosity's sake? And I couldn't find anything. I typed in like 100-pound preacher curl. There's like a few people that are like kind of doing half reps like this. There's maybe one or two other guys that could actually do a few full reps, so they're cheating a ton. And there's nobody doing what I do. And the crazy thing is, I don't think this is that crazy. Like, I think it's impressive, and it's taken me a bunch of training, and I don't want to downplay that at all. But the way I see this is like, this is like a 315 bench 10 years ago. Like 115-pound preacher curls. This is equivalent to a 315 bench in 2012, where everyone is like, whoa, like, you have to have good genetics and a lot of training to do that. Like, are you natural? And we are in that phase with preacher curls right now. This is the 2012 315 squat. This can absolutely be normalized through proper arm training methods and actually training your arm seriously. And this is exactly what I've talked about for years at this point on this channel. For 2.5 years, I've been hammering this point home. Nobody takes their full body training seriously. It's just lift dependent. It's, oh, how can I get my biceps as strong as I can? It's like, nope, how can I get my pull as strong as I can? How can I get a super strong chin up? How can I get a super strong deadlift? It's like, nobody looks at the specific muscles anymore. So when you take something like a preacher curl, and we have the standards so low to where like I'm the strong guy, like that, it should not be me. It should be like, I should be average, or maybe like good above average, but I shouldn't be like the only guy that's strong on preacher curls. Like, that revolution that happened to the squat, bench, deadlift in powerlifting has to happen to hypertrophy lifts in bodybuilding. Now, I'm not talking about a 1-rep max. I'm not talking about moving as much weight as you possibly can on a preacher, but I'm talking like good form, like 5 to 8 rep preacher curls with 18, 19 inch arms as a natural, like that can absolutely be the norm. We just have to make it happen. Like it's the same exact thing. The standards keep increasing and everything else, but for bodybuilding, it's like, all right, like it's almost 2025, and like I'm the only one doing it. Not to say anyone else isn't. I'm not saying I'm special or unique or anything, but I'm saying it's like there should be more. And I'm trying to show what you can do. So just a warm up here, 60 pounds, nothing crazy. I just want to go through a full run, get the blood flow going a little bit. I'm starting to feel a little warmer too. One of the downsides of filming these longer form videos is I can't really wear a sweatshirt or anything because I'm not going to rip it off over the mic and give you guys some deafness. So I have to start with a t-shirt. It's freezing down here. I can tell just by the vascularity. That's one tool I use, is if my arm veins are like hidden and tiny, that means you're cold. If they're starting to poke out a little bit more, it means you're actually warming up. So I can tell, even though I haven't trained arms at all this session, my forearm veins are starting to show a bit more. So again, with warm-ups, that's really all I do. There's tons of fear-mongering about preacher curls and injuries and all that kind of stuff, which is way, way, way overblown. So I'm not saying to just rush into your preacher curls and throw 115 pounds on there, but do your warm-ups, use an appropriate weight, ease into the lift, and you'll be fine. So last time I hit, I want to say it was 5 on my first set and then 4 on the next set. Today I have a back off set, so I'll be doing a lower rep set with 115 and then a back off with, I'm either going to go with 100 or 105. I've been super high reps on 100 at like 9 for the past couple weeks, so I'm going to try 105, see how that feels. And yeah, I got 5 and 4 with 115 last time. 5 was a PR, 4 was what I got the first time I tried it. You'll probably have seen that in Road to 18-inch arms from this past week. But yes, do 115 and then 105. All right, this thing's nowhere near like 23 minutes, so I should be good. So the one warm-up set, and then I hop into it. Whew. Oh, okay. I messed up my weights again. See, now me talking is just distracting me. I'm sure somebody noticed that I didn't put the right weights on this time, and they're probably seeing if I was going to notice, but luckily I did. I'm still trying to learn how to multitask. Miss Basic makes fun of me for not being able to multitask quite a bit as recently as this morning. So, whew. Yeah, and if you see me do this, that's just it creates friction to warm the pad. It's freezing down here. All right, let's go. Oh. All right, that was RPE 8. I don't like to take those to failure. I feel like I should give up a little bit first. So I probably, yeah, I think I got 5 there. Probably could have got like 7 or 8. But I didn't want to expend energy, I guess. So, oh. Now you can see like the actual behind the scenes of not just the face I make, but the interesting, to say the least, noises that come out of my mouth during these. So 105 for the back off. Again, very liberal with my rest time here. And that's fun. That's my it's my happy place. This is what I really enjoy doing. Like, the high you get from this is like, it's insane. I feel like an influencer doing a photo shoot in Dubai or something. Oh. All right, so that was 5, and this is a perfect lesson time. So you could say, all right, 5 reps. Well, I got that last time. It's a plateau. My arms aren't growing. I need to do more volume and change my lift. I have to get rid of these. But if you go to my last episode of 18-inch arms and you watch my, oh, you know what? That was earlier this week, so this will come out first. Interesting. Oh, how is my battery dying? That's insane. This might randomly shut off. I might have to charge this for a bit. But if you look at 18-inch arms should be released on Monday or Tuesday for this week. If you watch my the 3rd session in that video, so the second preacher curl session there, you'll see my set of 5 with 115. I may have attempted the 6, but it was just nowhere close. Like, I got an inch and I was like, yeah, not happening. I don't even remember if I tried it. Then this one, I battled for that 6th rep. Like, I got here and it was just about there. So on paper, 5 and 5, that's a plateau. If you have attention to detail, you know that 6th rep is almost there. And whether that's next session, 2 sessions, 3 sessions from now, it's going to happen, and I have the patience to make it happen. And that's something that I think a lot of lifters need to learn how to develop. It's that happy medium of working so incredibly hard, like you can push whatever reps and weight you want, but also having the patience and the humility to understand that the 1 session, 1 rep ratio is just arbitrary, and I'm not saying it's completely arbitrary, but I don't know, a little bit of a coincidence there. Same as the 3-plate, 4-plate, 5-plate squat, bench, deadlift, I guess. A little bit of a correlation, but it's clearly just picking a whole number that works on a ratio like that. So I'll take a couple minutes rest. This camera's going to die. I'm going to have to charge it up. I have to get another battery. I have to get a new camera. It is what it is. All right. Camera's back. Let me see. Oh, it's not even show. Okay, so it doesn't show what the actual battery life is when it's recording, but what I do know, if I think critically here, when it was recording last time, it showed an indicator for a low battery. So if there's no indicator this time, I guess it's probably not at low battery. So, good news, we're towards the end of the session anyways, so what I'm going to do here, 105 rep out. I have no idea what I'll get. I don't have a point of reference since my last time on this back off set was 100 pounds, and you might be saying, oh, it's only 5 pounds. On preacher curls, 5 pounds is astronomical. It is, it's absurd, and the way I learned that was when I hit 100 pounds for 8 or 9 reps, this is probably 2 months ago, I tried 110, and I got 2. Might have been 1. Like, I barely got 2, and I'm like, all right, yeah, that's probably a little. So, 105, gonna rep it out here. Let's see what I get. I like to start at the top, too, so you can start with an eccentric, as you can tell. No idea how many that was. It was either 7 or 8. I want to say it was 7. Not bad. I'll take that. I'll take that. I'm gonna write down 7 with a little question mark. So there we go. Up next, what I'm gonna be doing. If you have been watching the channel for a bit at this point, you'll know after preacher curls comes Bayesian curls. With this, I have to mock getting the setup, check the camera, make sure it's in the right spot. Since I'm filming into not a specific area, I'm just standing in the middle of kind of nowhere. So let's set this thing up. If you have an adjustable cable, like this Titan one that I use at your home gym, getting a Sharpie and labeling each hole is a total game changer. I don't know why I didn't think to do that for like 2 years of having this thing, if not longer actually. So let's get going on this thing. Weight on here is going to be 70 pounds total. This is not something I'm going very heavy on at all. Obviously, my biceps are pretty much toast after those 2 sets of preachers. So this is just to get some stretch work in and change the positioning. So one, I'm getting a full stretch on these, but I'm also getting a different resistance profile. So instead of it being most challenging way at the bottom right here, it's more challenging kind of right at this mid-range. So bit of a change. So I got 125, I need another, then I need 10s. This is my least favorite part of having a home gym, not having selectorized stuff. I have one selectorized machine back here, the pec deck. It was fun to set up. And that is said with a lot of sarcasm. So, relatively short rest. Still feeling the fatigue in my biceps, but performance isn't a high priority. Being super fresh isn't a high priority for this lift. I'm just getting a bit of a stretch and pumping away. Alright, that's it for that. Just one set, very straightforward. So what I'll do now is exchange these out, hop into a flat cable curl. I've been going a little bit lighter on these and really just going for not just higher reps, but kind of more control, maximizing the full range of motion on these. Since I already have kind of like a stretch focus that I just kind of go to here, preacher curls were all technical. All right, so battery's completely toast on this thing. Luckily, it's the end of the session anyway, so I would get a new battery, but I'm honestly just gonna get a new camera instead. So let's get this final set, finish off the biceps, and we're good for today. So nothing magical, nothing crazy here, just grinding these reps out. All right, that was probably very loud. Either way, that's all I got for today. If you have any questions, any topics you want to see in the next video, let me know. I'll keep an eye out in the comments. That was fun. I'll see you guys in the next one.